Hi everyone, Pam Gregor, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the first half of December and the new moon that we have coming up in Sagittarius on the 12th. Now, we have lost quite a lot of the sparky, explosive energy that we had through November. We had a hard aspect between Mars and Uranus, and I think we saw how that worked out with, I think it was 22,000 earthquakes in Iceland earlier in the month. So we've had some very, very intense energy. That intensity, to some extent, is easing, and a different quality of energy is coming in now. So the first 4 days of December, we've got a square between Venus and Pluto, late Libra to late Capricorn. And yes, this can bring up some intense relationship issues. It always has the potential for that. Venus, Pluto, intensity around relationship, particularly because Venus is still in Libra at that point, can be around issues of control or jealousy or possessiveness versus wanting more freedom and independence. It can also very much suggest some turbulence in financial markets too, and we have another aspect in a little while between Venus and Jupiter that could suggest that too. The whole volatility around the financial sector is very present at the moment. On the 5th of the month, we have a couple of feisty aspects between Mars being sesquiquadrate Uranus and Mars sesquiquadrate Eris in Aries and Mercury sesquiquadrate Uranus. So they are both pretty feisty energies. They need to speak their truth. They're quite rebellious. Could suggest more truth is coming out, and people really wanting to stand strong in their sovereignty, in their truth and their sovereignty, and being uncompromising. That's always a good watchword for Eris. And Eris, of course, in myth was the warrior sister of Mars. So that sesquiquadrate Mars to Eris is particularly strong. All month, we're going to have a very different energy from that, with a sextile. It's a little bit wide at times, but nevertheless, an operational sextile between Neptune and Pluto, which can actually suggest something quite paranormal, supernatural, as more and more of us are starting to feel more psychically sensitive, and that's very, very heightened in the first half of December because Neptune is very prominent. Now, the first important aspect for Neptune is on the 6th of the month, when Neptune becomes stationary direct. And whenever a planet changes direction, in this case stationary direct, it's like a huge ship coming to a still spot before it starts to change direction and move off again. So it's drilling down on that same degree point for an extended period, but it also magnifies the symbolism of that planet. So this is at 25 degrees of Pisces. As I said, it's on the 6th of the month. That will color a week to either side. But we have other strong Neptune transits coming up too. Now, on the less positive side with Neptune transits, it can suggest complete overwhelm for people. They just can't make sense of anything. They're in a fog. It can suggest confusion, disillusionment in what you believed in. The veil has suddenly been pulled away. That will happen more through 25 and 26 as Neptune leaves Pisces and enters Aries, dissolution of the veil. But in a very positive way, this can be a beautiful expression of Neptune. It's quite subtle, it's quite ethereal, but it's wonderful for your creativity. It heightens your imagination, your intuition, your dreams. For sure, keep a dream diary. You may want to tune into music more. That's very connected to Neptune, or any kind of art or poetry or anything creative. There's a great sensitivity to vibrations and aesthetics, that kind of thing. And there can be a real yearning, that's very much a Neptune word, a real yearning for a deeper connection to the divine, a deeper sense of spirituality in your life, a sense of oneness, a sense of connecting to source in a bigger way, and really having this overwhelming sense of an unconditional love for all beings. I mean, I really feel that with animals. I've always had a huge heart with animals, but more recently, I mean, my heart is just kind of exploding with my kind of tuning into animals, my care and love for animals, and that feels really special. This connecting us back to all living beings as part of Neptune's role. So it's very ethereal energy, and therefore sometimes it's hard to define or access in a way, but it's very, very important in terms of where we're going, because it's despite its ethereal nature, it's the bedrock of our spirituality, really. So, and it's also when Neptune is strong, there is this sense of reduced density. You know, we lose a sense of time and space and our own physicality to a large extent. So that's going to be actually very strong through the first half of the month. And we still have Saturn in Pisces until early 2026. That's one of the key messages, is dissolving density, dissolving our density, and also dissolving a sense of separation and division between us. And so that's backing up this magnified Neptune, if you like. But yes, and also idealism. I think we're likely to feel much more idealistic at this time. You know, wow, there has to be a way better way to live our lives than what we're seeing all around us, and indeed there is. We want to move away from lies, deceit, very much the shadow side of Neptune, and injustice. We want to move to this greater sense of interconnectedness of all living beings. It's quite Buddhist, actually, Neptune. So another aspect before we get to the new moon in Sagittarius is on the 7th. We have a beautiful positive aspect between Mercury and Jupiter. And Jupiter is in Taurus and Mercury is in Capricorn. So this is thinking big, expansive thinking, futuristic thinking, but also it's grounded in practicality, because they are both in earth signs. You know, how do we make this real? How do we make it permanent? And this could be around either financial systems, development of some new financial system that's becoming more evident, or new ways of growing food, you know, many inventions around that are entirely natural and organic that are happening. A couple of days later, on the 9th, we have an opposition between Jupiter and Venus. So by then, Venus is in Scorpio. So this is Jupiter 6 of Taurus to Venus 6 of Scorpio. And Jupiter can expand anything it touches. So again, if we have intensity in relationships, intensity in love, Venus and Scorpio, Jupiter can magnify that. Any issues around money, Venus invested money, Jupiter can magnify those. If there are any problems around those, it can magnify them, but it can also expand your wealth. Jupiter, Venus, expand your wealth. So it's going to work in different ways for different people, but it does have the potential to be very positive for us. And then we have the new moon happening on the 12th of December. Now, this is happening at 20 degrees and 40 minutes of Sagittarius. This is actually the 4th new moon in a row out of a row of 7 that is happening between 20 and 21 degrees of its sign. And as I've said in previous videos, if you have any planets or angles between 19 to 22 degrees, of their sign, they will be caught by this whole string of new moons in these coming months up until kind of March, April time next year. So that can give people who have that a very strong sense of new beginnings, really strong sense of new episodes being birthed, even stronger than average, let's say. So let me share the chart for the new moon with you now. Okay, here we go. So as always, I've set this for England because this is where I live. And so the sun and moon are always together at a new moon. So sun and moon together here, 2040 of Sagittarius. So ignore the clock face, ignore the houses, just look at where the planets are falling in their signs and the aspects they make to each other. So this is happening at 3:32 p.m. Pacific and 11:32 p.m. UK time. Now, with Sagittarius, it's wonderful. It's very expansive. That's the word that instantly comes to mind with Sagittarius. It's very expansive. It's linked to hope and optimism and the future visions, adventure, exploration, personal growth opportunities. So very positive in this way. Of course, it can also, because it's ruled by Jupiter, it can also expand whatever is prevailing at the time of this new moon. But generally, it has a very different quality to the Scorpio energy, which is so intense and inward, as we had in November. Very much the sign connected to freedom, connected to the law, and connected to justice. So we may see some new legal initiatives, legal cases coming forth at this time. There are many legal cases happening in the background. So several of these may come into prominence at this time. So for you personally, check out where 20 degrees, 40 minutes of Sagittarius falls in your chart. Don't forget to set a new intention. It's like planting a new seed. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website and go to the link below and buy a 2-part video series. And this will take you from zero to helping you understand what every update I do means for you. It's not a personalized analysis for you. It's a teaching video. But seeing where 20 degrees of Sagittarius falls in your house, in which house area in your chart, will help you to set a new intention. Is it money? Is it career? Is it health? What is it? So we have 5 planets in mutable signs here. We have Neptune and Saturn in Pisces, mutable, and 3 planets, Sun, Moon, Mars in Sagittarius. Mutable, as I've mentioned last time, is very malleable. It's very chameleon-like, and there's always a sense of we can change things more easily. It's very adaptable, it's very flexible, and this is really a theme I'm going to be picking up a little bit later. Now, continuing the strong Neptune theme, we can see that the new moon is square to Neptune here. 20 of Sagittarius to 24 of Pisces. And this can bring in an echo of everything I've been saying about Neptune. It also, of course, inevitably, Neptune in Pisces is very much linked to water and the seas, and that's a theme I'm going to be coming back to in a little while. But this can help to give us a vision, particularly because it's Sagittarius, it's future-oriented, ruled by Jupiter, a vision of the future that has a spiritual context to it, a spiritual foundation. Whenever we get combinations of either Sagittarius and Pisces or their rulers, Jupiter and Neptune, there's a sense of the mystic coming in and a sense of philanthropy. What can we do to help the common good? Sense of charity. What can we do? Can we send money? Can we give our time? Can we do something practical? Because Jupiter's in Taurus, what can we do to help other people? And that's really beautiful. And I think there's a stronger and stronger sense of that philanthropy coming in right now. That, how can we share a much greater sense since the last 3 years of how can we help each other? I think there's been a real boomerang effect actually with that. I know you'll follow my meaning here. So, and with all that though comes a clear sense of spiritual integrity, spiritual discipline, spiritual responsibility, I want to say. This square to Neptune can make us want to get more spirituality in our lives, a stronger spiritual practice, perhaps. And that's very much one of the themes of Saturn in Pisces, to really embed spiritual practice, whether it's breath work or meditation or candle gazing or a walk in nature, or whatever it is, to embed that practice in your daily routine. So it's non-negotiable. It's like cleaning your teeth in the morning, it's non-negotiable. I think just also to say that with Saturn in Pisces, just to remind you of that sense of spiritual responsibility, because I think an awful lot of things are kind of pinging around social media now, and really think before you share them or pass them on, is this going to raise the frequency of people who see this, or is it going to lower it? Is it simply indulgence about, the ain't it awful, the terrible things that are happening in the world, or is actually going to help to raise people's frequency? Frequency is everything. Everything. I'm going to be coming back to that too. So just to note here, and I'm going to be talking about it more next time, but Saturn is conjunct a dwarf planet called at 4:35 of Pisces, it's spelt Gong, but it's pronounced apparently Gong Kun. Talked about Gong Kun before. It's got a 551-year orbit, almost like Eris, very, very slow. Linked to a Chinese god who was said to, in frustration at not getting the throne, strike his head against the Buzu mountain, and as a result, he actually tilted the land and tilted the sky. He is associated with flooding, as is Pisces potentially, but also he ultimately became responsible for the management of flooding in the myth. So he has a very positive side in that way. Going to be talking more about Gong's conjunction to Saturn next time. But I haven't written it on the chart, but remember that I talked about it last time. Saturn is also conjunct a fixed role star of Persia called Fomalhaut. And Fomalhaut, remember, fixed stars only move a degree every 72 years, so they're with us for a lifetime, really. And Fomalhaut is linked to Archangel Gabriel, very much known as the spiritual teacher. So we have some beautiful spiritual archetypes and symbolism at this new moon. Also to say, actually, that Gongkun is also linked to dragon and serpent energy. I think we're going to see a lot more going forwards about dragon energy, serpent energy, because apparently that kind of energy is being awakened right now to help us in our spiritual ascension. So there is a sense here of lifting our vision, lifting Sagittarius, our future vision, to a higher purpose, to a greater sense of spirituality, a greater sense of devotion. We may be drawn more to sacred places. We're more sensitive to energy. We have this remembrance of telepathy and healing, and, as I say, connectedness to all living beings, which is really beautiful. And what helps us through this, I haven't written it in here because I've written it in several recent videos because it's ongoing, but Neptune is actually square to the galactic center, which is down here at 27 of Sagittarius, and also the dwarf planet Vada at 26 of Sagittarius. And that square continues all of next year. Vada was the dwarf planet that helped to create the cosmos originally. brilliant symbol for New Earth, that she can again birth the new Earth, the new vision, the new cosmos. Mercury here is stationary. So as always, when planets are stationary, Mercury is actually going stationary retrograde here. That principle is strengthened. Just to say that Mercury will turn direct on the 1st of January next year, which is very positive actually, because there's a sense of surging forwards, and by then every planet will be direct apart from Uranus, which goes direct later in January. I think it's the 27th of January. So Mercury is in this positive trine to Jupiter. This is really what I was talking about before, but it's strengthened because it's at the new moon, and it's strengthened because Mercury is now stationary. So this is bringing in those future visions that could be linked to finance, financial systems, but also the earth, growing food, etc. And what strengthens Mercury further is it is conjunct to a dwarf planet called Quawa. Now, I've talked about Quawa several times before, creator, god linked to the Tongva people who lived originally around the Los Angeles basin. And Quawa is said to bring order out of chaos, and we could do with a bit of that. And Quawa will always help to bring people together in community, to sing and dance, and from the joy that that brings, then set an intention from which to create. So you never create from chaos, you always create from joy. And Quawa, I think, is also very linked to the spirit world, the elementals, the fairies, etc. And again, I think that world, with our, again, reducing sense of density as we dissolve our density, we're going to see more of that as individuals. We're going to notice the elementals. We're going to notice the dragons with Gong Kun. And in a recent video, I mentioned Jill Bolte-Taylor, who had a very severe stroke in the left side of her brain, but that released the right side of her brain to really experience nirvana. And increasingly, that's where we are going to become much more right-brained. We've been very much trained, particularly in the West, in terms of being left-brained, logical, analytical. That's dissolving, along with linear time. Again, Saturn in Pisces. Saturn, linear time being dissolved in Pisces. So that's very strong. Now, what is of interest as well, actually, is that this new moon at 2040 of Sagittarius is actually conjunct the Mercury of the euro chart. The euro as a currency was set up on the 1st of January 1999 at 1 minute past midnight in Brussels. Mercury in that chart of the euro, the birth of the euro, is the chart ruler because it rules the ascendant at 29 degrees of Virgo, and also the midheaven ruler because that's at 29 degrees of Gemini in the chart for the euro. And Mercury rules both of those signs. So the ascendant, even in a country's chart, is the identity, how it's seen, and the midheaven is its status, its reputation in the world. And it's interesting that not only is this new moon conjunct the chart ruler and the midheaven ruler of that Euro chart, but if we look down the timeline through 2024, and we're not far off that now, Neptune, transiting Neptune, is going to come to 29 degrees of Pisces, so it will be opposing the ascendant and squaring the midheaven of that chart representing the birth of the euro. Now that suggests that there could be some weakening or dissolving of the euro currency. That's going to be very interesting. There's going to be a lot of change with euro currencies and their relative wealth value. But wasn't it interesting that the full moon we've just had in Gemini, 4 degrees of Gemini, the moon there was conjunct the south node of the chart for the EU, the birth of the EU, that whole collective of countries. So that suggests, again, that's the collective past actions of the EU under the bright light of the full moon that we've just had at the end of November, 27th of November, coming to light in some way. So something definitely happening that's very big changes around the Euro and the EU in the coming months. And also, of course, massive changes happening in America, as I've spoken about many, many times. Now, other things of note is that the new moon, the sun and moon are conjunct Mars widely, it's about 7 degrees, but nevertheless conjunct. And Mars in Sagittarius, I always think of the crusader, somebody getting on a horse and just charging into battle because of their beliefs. So Mars in Sagittarius is very vigorous and enthusiastic, can be quite opinionated, quite dogmatic about beliefs. And there can even be a kind of religious fundamentalism around this, a religious zeal, which is kind of tipping the apple cart. But coming back to some very positive aspects, the sun and moon are trine to Eris at 24 of Aries and the North Node at 21. So this is giving ease and flow to all that Eris and the North Node in Aries are about. Aries, sovereignty, truth, individual power, individual rights, justice, fairer society with Eris. So this is more of a beneficial flow, an energetic, because it's Sagittarius, an energetic but beneficial flow to make those energies manifest in society, the shift towards a fairer society. The other thing I'd really like to point out, I'm going to go on one of my rambles here, I think, but I haven't fully downloaded where I'm going with this, but nevertheless, you can have some sort of, I'm going to share some embryonic thoughts about this. So sun and moon here are tightly conjunct, this green line here, to Uranus, planet Uranus at almost 20 degrees of Taurus. And so this is a quincunx. Now, Uranus, as you well know, is linked to galactic beings and news. Think of galactic, we are galactic beings. We're made of stardust. We're not 100% human from the Earth. We've been all over the place. So think of the galactic beings, whether it's the Arcturians or the blue light Sirians or the Andromedans or whatever. Are they merely aspects of our future selves? Maybe even our past selves, but certainly our higher self, I think. So they are overwhelmingly beneficial for us in our evolution. And I think they are helping us as much as they can. So Uranus connected to that, connected to awakening, suddenly seeing the light and seeing things in a very different way. Also connected, it's the planet linked to electromagnetism. Now that's electromagnetism in various forms, because of course we can have man-made electromagnetic frequencies that are not helpful for our bodies, Wi-Fi and all of those electromagnetic frequencies that kind of are not sympathetic to our coherence, our natural organic electromagnetic fields. But it can also represent very much the natural electromagnetism that's happening all over the cosmos, because it is. I mean, we are essentially electromagnetic beings. And there is just overwhelming amounts of data on that. I'm going to stop sharing here. So I just want to really talk and perhaps ramble a little bit, because we know that thoughts are electrical impulses, and the emotions that that thought produces are magnetic waves. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot in his work, whether those emotions are joy, love, or anger, whatever. There's a link between the thought and the emotion, and they produce a kind of set point, a frequency output from us, the electromagnetic wave, which not only affects us and every cell in our body, but we're beaming out, we're broadcasting out to the world, to the collective, and all around us. So we are essentially electromagnetic beings. Now, we're going to be hearing an awful lot more about this principle of electromagnetism and frequency as we go forwards. And the reason for that, there are two principal reasons as we go into 2024. Uranus rules the sign of Aquarius, and you think the two jaggedy lines in the glyph of Aquarius. Pluto is re-entering Aquarius in January. It will spend 9 months of 2024 in Aquarius, but essentially it's the beginning of a 21-year transit in Aquarius for Pluto. And Pluto will always intensify, that word we've used so many times, will always intensify the symbolism of the sign it's moving through. Uranus, as I say, rules Aquarius, so it's very linked to frequencies, electromagnetism, galactic information, beings of all kinds. But there is absolutely no doubt that we are electromagnetic beings, and that can even be measured on the machinery escapes me right now, but I've mentioned it in the past, and it can actually measure your frequency. And of course, the more electrical charge we have in a natural positive way, generally the healthier we are, because it means that our mitochondria, these tiny little kind of power batteries in our cells, are working very fully and very positively for us. But we know from Professor Robert Temple's work, who is an expert on plasma, that everything around us in the cosmos is not only plasma, but this is electromagnetically charged divine consciousness and divine intelligence. So we as little individual human beings with our own electromagnetic field are constantly 24/7, we're unconscious of it most of the time, but 24/7 we are interacting with this greater crystalline plasma, which is electromagnetically charged divine consciousness and divine intelligence. There's a constant free flow. Now, in my conversation on my channel with Veda, and I know she's mentioned it in other interviews as well, she sees water as God consciousness, which is just beautiful. She's really advancing our understanding of consciousness. And she also sees us as human beings merely in the flow, that we ingest water, we digest it through our system, we excrete water, and on it goes through other human beings. It's the great interconnector all over the world. And therefore, we need to be much more conscious, I think, and aware of our relationship with water. And Veda's work is extraordinarily beautiful and detailed in this regard, because we know both from Masaru Emoto's work and from Veda's that we are constantly imprinting water. It's super sensitive to being imprinted with our thinking and our emotion. Veda literally has thousands of photographs of water crystals that demonstrate this. And recently I heard her say that she was having a conversation on the phone with someone about the infinity symbol. And as she came off the phone, she suddenly had an instinct to make a water crystal of her saliva. So she put some of her saliva in the petri dish, froze it, and hey presto, the infinity symbol, the figure 8, appeared very clearly in the water crystal. So water is being imprinted by our last thought, if you like, our last feeling or our last thought. That's pretty profound because it says that the water, God consciousness, is constantly reading where you're at. So if you go on a bit of a gloom and doom, big scary thing, I'm now in fear, that's going to be imprinted on every cell in your body, but it's also what you're going to be excreting out to the collective, as well as beaming it out by your toroidal field. This is huge, I think, in terms of our spiritual responsibility and awareness. I think that one thing that Veda said has really hit me very hard in terms of how powerful we are as co-creators, but how responsible and wise and conscious we need to be in our relationship with water. Every moment, 24/7, we are imprinting every cell in our body. And as Veda says, by molecular count, we are 99% water. We are 99% God consciousness, interacting with the larger God consciousness out there. I think this is huge. And I've still got L plates on with all of this because I think there's something massive here for us to understand about the creation of reality. I've been going down a lot of rabbit holes with this. Now, as Veda has said as well, we think the air all around us is just air. But as she's wisely pointed out, it has tiny water droplets in it, has moisture in the air. So water takes different forms. It's in the air as water droplets. It's obviously liquid that we drink. It can be ice, it can be crystals. And there's a fourth phase of water, which Dr. Gerard Pollack has written a whole book about, called EZ water. And this is a kind of gel that you see in plants and vegetables. It's kind of a more concentrated form of water. So water can take many forms in its God consciousness, if you like. And because we know that our density is reducing, because we're moving to the light body, with everything I've said in so many videos about this, and also in that very recent video where I shared the experience of Jill Bolte-Taylor, who'd had a stroke in her left brain. And, you know, if you haven't seen it, I'll put the link below again, because it's a 20-minute TED talk, which is really beautiful, you know, emotional, powerful. And so therefore she was left in free flow, if you like, with her right brain to experience nirvana. And this is where we're headed. We've been very much taught to live in our left brain with logic and analysis and linear time. We are shifting more and more to our right brain of connection to all living beings. And indeed, in other videos, I've heard Jill talk about when she was having her stroke, she lost a sense of separateness. You know, she was no longer, you know, had a boundary of the skin where she was a separate body. She was just free flowing with the walls and the stairs and everything. She saw herself simply as vibrating energy, which is very much how I experienced myself in healing sessions. So all of that says that as we move forwards and we move towards the light body, we are becoming much more malleable in our own sense of being, but more malleable in how we see our reality. You know, so much, if we're in fear, we're in contraction, we're watching the nightly news, we think there's one all-prevailing, inescapable, scary reality, and there absolutely isn't. Because the future is a blank slate. We think it's all set out, you know, step by step. Nuh-uh. It's a blank slate. There is a, you know, a floating plan for that. But we are powerful co-creators. And when we come together in high frequency, and that's why my very simple 15-minute meditation on a Sunday evening at 7 p.m. UK time that's what that's about, and many other people are doing this kind of thing, is to shift our frequency. Because if we can shift our frequency to joy, to love, to peace, to compassion, that higher frequency is everything and where we're going, has a more powerful effect on the lower frequency because of the law of physics of downward causation. We have a greater effect. So a smaller number of us can change our future reality. And we are, by the way, we've created a higher timeline simply by our consciousness. Those of us who are working very diligently on this. And it's becoming stronger by the day. And, I'm reminded of the wonderful, brilliant cosmologist, Dr. Jude Currivan. I've mentioned this before. She's very psychic and she's been psychic since childhood. And she has visions of this energetic architecture of light, which, when we're being very positive and coherent in our energy and our frequency, that we create this architecture that comes to, and she can see it kind of flickering and sputtering, and then a big scary thing might come into the collective, and the geometry of light kind of disintegrates until we come together again in a big meditation that takes stronger form of light. This is what we're doing. Every time we come together, we build stronger bricks and mortar, if you like, stronger foundations, stronger architecture for new Earth. This is what we're doing with our frequency. We are working with the invisible. I know it's really, really, really hard to get our heads around because our lives have been so tangible. But this is where we're going. And it's interesting, the Buddhist author Paul Levy, who is also very much enmeshed in quantum physics, talks about our reality is actually more like lucid dreaming. Now, some people have experienced lucid dreaming where they're aware that they're dreaming and they can actually direct the dream. And Paul Levy says this is much more akin to what's happening in our own reality. Once we become more conscious, we can start to direct our dream, direct our day-to-day reality in a more powerful way. So therefore, what we are doing, because everything is connected, Professor Robert Temple talks about the whole cosmos is one consciousness. It's one consciousness. It's one spectrum of density, let's say. And therefore, those of us working diligently on this creation of new Earth and raising the frequency are inevitably affecting the whole. We can't not affect the whole because everything is connected. Everyone is connected because it's one consciousness. So we're not separate. We never have been. And this raising of frequency is absolutely crucial in accelerating the arrival, the manifestation of new Earth for more of us. I mean, it's already there as a level of consciousness. It's not a place, it's a consciousness. But if we feel stuck in fear, stuck in anger, stuck in hate, stuck in separation, stuck in, oh my God, XYZ is really going to happen, we are really not only acting as a ball and chain for what could be magnificent for us all, but I've said this before, giving life force, giving a life support system to what you absolutely do not want more of. And I'm sorry I'm banging on about this and being repetitive, but it's so vital in terms of where we're going, because Pluto in Aquarius is going to go two ways. It's going to go two ways, that we are either masters of our frequency, masters of our thinking and our emotion and our destiny, or not. And as Pluto is about to re-enter Aquarius on the 20th of January, we've got to get into a routine of being super conscious, super aware, super wise of how we are using our thinking and our emotion. Because if we can get into these positive states, we can bubble wrap ourselves from the worst excesses of what we think is going to come, And that isn't a selfish thing at all. That is the most helpful thing we can possibly do for the collective. Otherwise, we're back in the hamster wheel of horrors, as I've talked about many times, round and round the hamster wheel. War, death, poverty, misery. We've got to create, we've got to step into who we are really meant to become, what our dharma is as powerful co-creators. And in that way, we alter the quantum wave structure for the entire collective. So a couple of years ago, I talked about lock onto love as a docking station. Lock onto love. And I really, really encourage you at this time, because the 3D is going to get crazy. I mean, just know that. The 3D is going to get crazy because it's collapsing. Things are going to be happening very fast next year, both in a very positive way and in a challenging way at the 3D level. But we don't have to live at that level. But as things collapse, systems don't work, you know, there are breakdowns happening in society, it's going to get more difficult. But don't make that your focus. Put your focus on and attention on what you want to create. So what this requires is our discipline, our spiritual discipline. Yes, our focus. Yes, our attention and our consistency. I really want to say our consistency, because yeah, all of us to some degree wobble a tiny bit. You know, I'm sent 10 tons of stuff every day that people think I should see. And if it's, you know, if it takes me into a lower frequency, I'll just stop watching. I don't want to go there. Whatever information is in there, I don't want to go, because frequency is everything. Frequency is foundational. Frequency is fundamental. And I'm in the business of creating something magnificent to help us all, as millions of you are. So because we have to create more coherence in our energy focus, coherence comes from consistent practice, in order to create more stability in that architecture of light that we're creating for New Earth. So starve out the scary. So this a while back as well. Starve out the scary, love in the good, lock onto love, and absolutely do everything you can to create something loving, abundant, compassionate, joyful, peaceful, and magnificent for us all. And you can do that for free, at home, anytime, all day, simply by observing your frequency. Stick post-it notes all over the house, kitchen, cupboards, bathroom mirror. What's your frequency? What are you focused on? Where's your attention going? So I know I've said many of those things before, but I'm putting them, I hope every time I talk about them, I'm adding more information into them to not only help me sort out my framework, but to help you too, in this incredibly unique evolutionary opportunity to absolutely optimize it for humanity. I hope that's helped. A lot in there today. Going to be having some interesting conversations going forwards in the next month or two. So God bless for now. If you'd like more information about my books, videos, long newsletter, just go to pamgregory.com. Have a wonderful December, and I'll be saying this again in the next video, but just thank you, just from the bottom of my heart, for all your love, all your comments, all your caring, all your sharing, all your everything you do, because I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you. So really feel very connected to you, my family of frequency. Lots of love. Bye for now.